into that sort of thing, if you end up in Parksburg, give me a holler. I'll come over and buy you a drink on a warm Saturday afternoon. I've been in the filtration industry since 1990. I started out, much like everybody in this room, working for a distributor company. I started out in a warehouse doing receiving, and then also shipping and inventory control. And then from there I moved to inside sales, was working the phone. Whoop, man down.
You feel bound? I got it. Okay. Just saving the box.
Worked in inside sales, taking inbound phone calls and satisfying customers' requests. It was process instrumentation and filtration equipment. And then from there, they pushed me to outside sales, where I was handling the whole state of Maryland and the Eastern Shore. And it was quite a bit of driving. I was living in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, which is just kind of near the Exton, Westchester area. And one of my customers in Columbia, Maryland made me an offer to take over their sales in the state of Pennsylvania. And I had 2 new kids and had just built a house, and I said, okay, yeah, instead of driving 50, 60,000 miles a year, I can knock that down to 30, 35,000. And so I went to work for a company out of Columbia, Maryland, still in process filtration, and I worked predominantly in fluid power and oil and fuel filtration. So I spent a lot of time at places like Alcoa Aluminum, Peach Bottom, Limerick Power Stations, just to name a few, and just dabbled a little bit in the high purity side of things. Back in this past summer, Donaldson made a run at me. I really wasn't looking for a new job. I was pretty happy where I was. And they made a run at me because I had been a distributor for them for 19 years in fluid power. Selling spin-ons, you know, spin-on filter cans and some process instrumentation. So I accepted their offer because my kids are all grown up and they're out of the house. Actually, one of them's getting married this July, so I really need you to sell a lot of fillers because weddings are ridiculously expensive. You say the word wedding and everything goes up by 200%. It's crazy. In any event, I am still kind of the new guy. I do have a lot of application experience, working hands-on, so to speak. This literally is the most dressed up I've ever been in my life. I've been wearing jeans and work shirts and steel tips and hard hats for 25 years because I've always been sort of on the ground. But luckily I have 2 daughters and a wife who know how to buy clothes and dress me up. I look somewhat presentable. So Donaldson, they started in the early 1900s and they literally made the first air intake filter for a tractor used in agricultural production or farming. All it was goosed down, soaked in oil, shoved into a can, and then bolted to the top of the engine, a diesel engine, and thus born the first air filter for a reciprocating engine. And then from there it's really blossomed. So you all hold one of these probably every day. Well, Donaldson, specifically if you have an iPhone, Donaldson has touched this product. So if you look at the end, where the speakers are, there is a hydrophobic membrane made out of Teflon on each of these gaps on the inside of the frame. And Teflon is what we call hydrophobic, meaning it's water hating, so it prohibits humidity from getting inside and messing with your electronics. Doesn't help it that if you lean over in the rest stop and it's in your chest pocket and it falls in the toilet, you're screwed. Doesn't help. There's also another membrane on the speaker location. Back in the 80s, the #1 warranty claim for automobile manufacturers was condensate in your taillight assemblies because they all switched to an injection molded taillight assembly made out of plastic. And they had vent holes on it, so it would breathe for thermal expansion and contraction. It gets cold, it shrinks, gets hot, it expands. Well, you end up with condensate on the inside, and it was shorting out the electronics, the socket where your bulb would go. So Donaldson said, let's put a little Teflon patch on those vent holes to prevent that humidity from getting sucked inside the taillight assembly. So that's just two areas where a filter, kind of like a glorified window screen, has benefited manufacturers that touch a lot of people every day. So what I want to do is just go over a brief overview of the products that we have, and then talk a little bit about the application of those products. Zoom it'll wake up, right?
Yeah.
All right, that's what it thinks. So, Donaldson has a lot of different divisions. They have an engine division. They have a compressor division, not compressed air, but compressor. So I don't know if you've ever sold compressors before, but this would be an Ingersoll Rand or an Atlas Copco unit. There's a lot of filters that get bolted on to that compressor, and they're labeled with the OEM name tag. So Donaldson does do private labeling in that case. They also do a lot of dust collection. If you've ever been over at the casket factory across the highway where they make all the boxes that we eventually end up in, they do a lot of wood processing there. And that wood dust, you got to get it out of the atmosphere because it actually can become explosive. So there's a lot of dust collection going on. The trash to steam plant, they also do a lot of dust collection, especially on their flue gas. So there's a lot of filter media that is used there. But I'm on the compressed air side and the process filtration. So I'm going to show you what those products look like and what some of those applications are. So just real quickly, a brief overview of the product line. We're going to look at some potential applications, and then I'll talk about the relevance in the marketplace. What I don't do is that I don't take salt out of water. I don't take sugar out of water. I don't take anything that is dissolved into water out. That is done either through ultrafiltration or reverse osmosis. Even though you may pick up one of my products and it says ultrafilter on it, that's just a trade name. It's not an application. Why do we filter? It's very important. The pizza that you just ate, the raw products before they went to Domino's, filtration was involved. The soda pop, I say pop because I'm originally from Pittsburgh. Go Steelers. Benefited from filters. So filters are used anytime you walk through a supermarket. Look on either side of the aisle, and I guarantee you that filtration was used in the manufacturing or the packaging of that consumer good. So that's why we filter, to remove liquids, aerosols, and vapors, to prevent contamination or spoilage of product. It has to deal with shelf life of a food product, even if it's canned. All right, avoid freezing, compressed air systems, especially with the winter that we just had. You can get freezing in your compressed air pipes, which can shut a place down. Protect against contaminants that may break free from lines such as rust. A black iron pipe, you go to Harley Davidson and their compressed air lines could have been in service for the past 30 years, and you get a lot of scale on the inside of that pipe. And you get a good hydraulic shock of compressed air moving downstream, and it breaks that crap loose, and it ends up in the tool, ends up in the air gun, or it ends up in the PLC controller. And it can cause problems. Not catastrophic problems, but those nagging problems which, for a maintenance manager, he doesn't want to have to deal with. So the particulate that I'm typically filtering is actually below what, if you still have 20/20 vision, God bless you, but I don't, but is below what the naked eye can see. So 40 microns, so right here, roughly right here, 40 microns. And then you run down here, mold spores, human hair, mist, pollen, some coal dust, and some milled flour. I'm filtering everything smaller than that. And it's, at first I said, well, why is that important? Well, as I got more and more involved in the industry, I discovered why, and I can go into that a little bit later. But just realize that the value, the micron value, the size of the particle that we are filtering out is below what the naked eye, if it's 20/20 vision, can see. These are some of the products that we use. Here's our compressed air products. They're either NPT fitted or flange fitted. And standard cubic feet per minute is our flow capacity for the compressor. And we can do pressures even up close to 6,000 psi with this product here. Why do you think you would be using let's say I'll throw a value out, 600 psi. Where do you think that is used with this Sprite bottle? Any guesses?
600 psi where it's used?
Yeah. In the manufacturing of, well, I would say in the packaging, not the manufacturing of, but the packaging of soda pop.
Blow mold, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Blow mold. So, Sprite and Coca-Cola will actually do their own blow molding. Why? Because if you ship a truckload of empty 2-liter plastic bottles to your facility, you pay an arm and a leg, because trucking doesn't necessarily charge by the weight. They would always like to, but they'll have a classification on this which will make your eyes bleed if you saw what it would cost. So Coca-Cola and Pepsi and Dr. Pepper, they'll buy preforms. So this bottle originally looked like this, and then it goes into a machine where it gets reheated, and then they bump it with 600 psi compressed air while it's inside the mold, so it looks like this. 600 psi, that air better be clean, because you don't want to impregnate the inside of this plastic, especially when it's hot, with contamination, especially hydrocarbons, especially oils. All compressors are basically have large spinning devices on the inside, and you have to lubricate them. And if you don't lubricate them, then the compressor seizes. But unfortunately, unless you're running a very expensive centrifugal Syntac style compressor, typically you're going to be using a screw compressor, and some of that lubricating oil ends up in the compressed air stream. So the lube oil that goes inside of a screw compressor is a consumable. Unlike if your engine in your car is running well, you don't want to be consuming oil in your car. So they will use 600 psi to pop this open when they reheat the preform. So that's where you would run into using this. You'll use this upstream of the 600 psi booster. So the outlet of the compressor may be 125 psi, and then it goes into a booster which bumps it up to 600 psi. These are the elements, and here's one right here, that go into these filter housings. So a filter housing is nothing more than an envelope, and then you have a lot of flexibility of what you can stuff inside that envelope. It also creates aftermarket business, which is very, very important in, help driving your top line sales figures, for growth. You sell a filter housing once, but you sell the filter element numerous times. It's just like razor blades. They'll give you the handle for free as long as you buy their blades for the next 6 months or whatever. This here is for condensate management. All compressors will blow down condensate or water, and in that water will be some trace oils. You're now technically allowed to blow that onto the ground. It's an environmental hazard. So we use these devices where the compressor will blow that condensate and oily mixture down and help separate it and allow you to control it in a very environmental friendly way. So this is a typical compressed air layout. So you might be already selling the aftercooler. All that is a shell and tube heat exchanger. You may be selling the receiver tank. In this case, we call this a wet receiver because it's before the refrigerated dryer. Unfortunately, I don't have those items in which I can support your sales efforts, but I do understand the flow diagram. So refrigeration drying is very typical I don't know if you have a line of refrigerated dryers, but if you're big in the compressed air market, you might want to think about looking at a line of refrigeration dryers. So once we get to the outlet of the refrigeration dryer, that compressed air goes almost anywhere. It goes to an impact wrench. It goes to a spray gun. It goes to a blow molder. So then you guys discover those applications, you come back to me and you tell me what the process is. And I may say, well, you need these filters here because it's going to a spray gun application over the paint booth at Harley. Okay? Or over here is going to a programmable logic controller, which is basically a computer that helps automation run. And you need really, really dry compressed air. So I'll say that you need this point-of-use dryer. It's just a very simple, you just got to find out what the end use of the compressed air is. Next time you open up your favorite hot dog roll bag, realize that that bag was laying flat on the packaging machine and there's no human that's opening it up and shoving the rolls in. It's all done by automation. So they'll use a puff of compressed air to blow that bag open. Within a split second, those rolls get shoved in. Okay? So just tell me what the end use application is. Even if you're working counter sales and somebody comes up scratching their head, you got something for this? Just write it down real quick and then send me an email and I'll figure it out for you. This is just a closer look at some of the filter housings that I've already talked about. Here we have pressure ranges up to 250 psi, up to 600 standard cubic feet per minute. This line here, again, up to 250 psi, but in excess of 4,000 standard cubic feet per minute. And there's a distinct advantage between this one in the middle and then this one in this housing, is that this can be ASME code, which is a pressure code regulation for any pressure vessel that's not fired, meaning you're not boiling water in it by using natural gas or propane or something like that. And then again, our high pressure filter housings that you may find in a blow mold application. Just a closer look at the filter elements, and one thing that I want to point out about this particular filter element is that it's a good money maker. Not only is it expensive, but it has a proprietary fit. So your competition can't come and say, well, I have this Napa filter. Can you cross-reference it to a Wix filter? You can't do that with this. It's patented, and it's good for the next 9 years. So you sell this filter housing and this filter combination, then you have captured that aftermarket business for the next 9 years, which is a good thing to have. Sometimes customers don't like it because they don't like being restricted like that, and as a distributor I understand that, but I try to guide people around that by talking about the features and the benefits. Some of the other industrial products, this is a cyclone separator. It's just a static filter. It's a filter housing that has a cyclone on the inside of it, but it's static. It doesn't actually spin. And it just helps remove gross water out of your compressed air stream. This is a closer look at our point-of-use dryer. It's just desiccant. All it is either activated alumina or silica gel to use to dry the compressed air to up to minus 90-degree dew point. So when I say dew point, if you have a compressor here and production facility out here, but that pipe, as it goes from compressor to production facility, passes outside or close to an outside wall, and when you get really cold in the winter, that ambient effect of that outside temperature could end up freezing that pipe. So if the compressed air isn't dried below that ambient condition, you're going to get ice on the inside of that pipe. And it shuts the place down. Does anybody know what lost production time in manufacturing average cost per hour in the United States is? When you have a forced outage. There's a big oopsie, something breaks, and you got to shut the line down. The average cost per hour in manufacturing in the United States is $20,000 an hour, and what lost production time means. That's rather high. So process filtration, so we're going to move out of the compressed air world, and now we're going to get into process, and that could be either a gas or a liquid. So, beverage. We all drink beverages, non-alcoholic and alcoholic beverages. Filters are used in the production, in the manufacturing of that liquid every time. And here's an interesting story. We all drank apple juice, right? We all drink apple cider, right? They're basically the same product. What's the difference?
Filtration.
Filtration. Would you buy apple juice that is cloudy? Think about it, would you?
Probably not.
No. But come October, will you buy apple cider that's cloudy? Yeah. The difference there is filtration. That's just one example. Steam, applesauce, tomato sauce. How do you make that at home? You have a garden of tomatoes. How do you make fresh tomato sauce from the tomatoes that you harvested from your garden? How do you do that?
Boil them?
Yeah. You use steam or hot water. Large production facility like Fermano Foods in Milton, PA, they just have basically a very large pressure cooker. Or Now's Foods for making applesauce. A pressure cooker the size of this room. It looks like a torpedo. And they pump incredible amounts of steam directly into the mixture of the chopped up tomatoes or the chopped up apples. Well, the FDA says that that steam has to be filtered. That they call it culinary steam or clean steam. So that big hunkin' centered pipe laying on the table there is a steam filter. Its smaller brother or smaller sister is further down the table. And the reason why you use big ones or small ones is all based on flow rate. That's all it is. It's all based on flow rate. So next time you're shopping, because you're having pasta night, Wednesdays is pasta night in my house. So I go and buy tomato sauce. And it used steam to make it. Usually stainless steel housing, and that's how come these products tend to be more expensive. And the reason why we use stainless, any idea?
Sanitary.
Yeah, sanitary. Bright, shiny filler housing, sitting up on the table there, or the ones laying down. The reason why they're bright and shiny like that is that they're easier to clean and easier to keep clean. Because bacteria is not your friend if you're making applesauce or tomato sauce. So processed market. So we have, as I already commented, non-alcoholic beverages, bottled water, such as Nestle's or Turkey Hill. Alcoholic beverages, the craft beer industry in Pennsylvania is huge right now. There's over 2,500 licensed craft brewers in the state of Pennsylvania. And there's over 1,500 applicants on Harrisburg's desk right now to sign for just 2015. The craft beer industry in the United States right now represents 18% of total beer consumption. By 2020, a short 5 years from now, they want to own 30% of the market. That's huge. That's huge market growth. Now, some of these craft beer manufacturers don't have the capital money to make that happen. But InBev, which owns Budweiser, just purchased 2 large craft beer facilities, one on the East Coast and one on the West Coast. And they're not changing a thing. Matter of fact, a lot of people don't even know that Budweiser bought them. But what it changes for people like you and I who sell pipe-fitted components is now these craft beer guys have capital money in which to invest back into their company to help sustain growth. Dairy. We're very big in dairy. Cheese, yogurt, and milk are the 2 major products. We provide the sterile air and nitrogen that is used in a lot of yogurt facilities. So next time you eat blueberry yogurt, think that probably Donaldson played a very important step in that. So you have your cultured milk over here, your plain yogurt, Greek style, in this tote, 300 gallons. And in this tote, you have about 200 gallons of blueberry preserves. And they pump it out at a rate of about 5 gallons a minute. But as they pump it out, you end up with more open air space inside the tank. Well, they don't allow oxygen to come in there because it promotes food spoilage. They just bring in a little bit of nitrogen to cover that open air space inside the tank. The nitrogen will not promote food spoilage, and it allows them to preserve the quality of that food for a longer period of time, or that blueberry preserved mixture. Culinary steam, we have filter housings and stainless steel filter elements, sterile air. So we take compressed air and then we steam sterilize the inside of the filter housing and the filter element. We let it cool down and then we start pumping compressed air through it. And that compressed air can be used to relieve a baked loaf of bread out of a pan. Liquid filtration, all this is about 98% water. And it's filtered down to 0.45 micron before all the flavors are mixed together and then pumped into the bottle. These are the bright shiny housings. So this is NPT fitted, and this is triclover. Why won't this housing ever be called sanitary? And it has an RA finish, or a surface finish, of only 62. And that's a value, it's like your golf score. Anybody play golf? The smaller your score, the better. So when we talk about surface finish, we call it an RA, which stands for roughness average. The smaller the number, the more it becomes like a mirror. All right, this is sanitary inherently because of the triclover fitting and an RA 32 finish. But both of these, as they sit alone in the box, are not sterile. You need a sterilizing agent, and typically that'll be steam to kill bacteria. This won't remain sterile as long as this filter housing will. And then this product over here, the PF-EG, is a filter housing much like this one, except this is intended for liquid, and I have an example of that. So what do you think list value on that filter housing is sitting on the desk there? Anybody want to guess?
2,500.
No. It's about $1,900. And your discounts can be as high as 35–40% on a buy resale agreement. So you can imagine walking into a facility that has 60 of those. That's just a lot of money in housings. But then you guys sell all the pipe. You sell all the valves. You sell all the fittings. So you can see how these production facilities, like a Turkey Hill or a Wawa, they're very expensive, extremely expensive. But it's mandated by USDA, FDA, so on and so on and so on.
What is the point of the legs on those for?
First, sitting on a floor.
Okay.
Or a shelf or a bench, but they're not mandatory.
Okay.
These are some more liquid housing. This one's very popular for people who build skids. All right, so a place like Turkey Hill, dairy operation, they may have a couple pipe fitters in-house, they may have a pipe shop, but they don't have the ability to do large expansion projects. And they'll farm that out to a contractor. We typically call them skid builders. But typically, they have to be made in a small footprint. So they like to use this filter housing here because it doesn't have any right angles in it, doesn't need to sit on the floor. It's like a spool piece. It gets plumbed right in line with the rest of the pipe or tubing that you're selling. This is a tank vent filter. Every tank that stores a liquid in food production has a tank vent filter on it. These are some of the elements that get stuffed inside of these housings. This is for sterile air. This is all stainless, so that's obviously what we use for steam. And this is our water filters. So this is just a typical flow diagram of how to make sterile air. To blow open that bag before you stuff the bread in it. So you get all the piping, you get all the valves, whether they're industrial MPT fitted valves or whether they're triclover fitted valves here. Steam traps. You get all those components. I'm just asking for five filter housings. Before we start pumping sterile air, we're going to bring in 15-pound steam, and we're going to cook the inside of that filter housing and the filter element for about an hour. Then we have to let it cool, and then we can use some compressed air to dry it. So this valve will remain closed. This valve is open, and now we're just blowing down some compressed air to dry the filter element. After about 2 hours, now we're ready to start pumping sterile air into my packaging facility. And I'm packaging mayonnaise, I'm packaging ocean spray cranberry juice, goes on and on and on. So this is a nice piping layout to see where all of your components impact a consumer good. And actually, we like this diagram so much that we even publish it on the back of one of our brochures. This is an excellent sales tool to help your customers understand what you do. You sell every bit of this. RO systems, Donaldson, which is a brand name for Coca-Cola bottled water. They'll take water out of the ground or from a municipal source, and they'll run it through a pre-filter into a storage tank. And then they'll use some really fancy sand or carbon to help remove sediment and other things that are dissolved, other compounds that are dissolved into the water. And then we go into another, and there's other stages of filtration, various different micron values. Then we go into a storage tank, then we go through the RO system. Or actually, I'm going the reverse way. We go through the RO into the storage, and then it goes into packaging. But with Dasani or Aquafina, they strip everything out of that water. And then they actually put salts back in so they can get that water to taste the way they want it to taste. So it's a very intensive process, and there's a lot of filters and a lot of tanks and a lot of pumps and a lot of pipe and a lot of valves. And even if these production facilities are up and running, things break. Actuators on valves break. Valves leak. Unions leak. Triclover clamps break. So there's always that aftermarket business. So and then you start thinking about the filter housings that are on site, which are in the gold here. There's aftermarket potential there to sell filter elements like this one or this one. Or if there's steam on site, you can sell that one too. It all helps drive aftermarket sales, which is a key ingredient to a facility like this in its yearly sales goals. Water purification, I don't think, I really just went over that. Sterile filling. There's a term that we use, it's called co-pack. So you go and buy this barbecue sauce. Never heard of it before. It's like Uncle Ted's barbecue sauce. Well, Uncle Ted does not own a building to package his sauce. He goes and contracts that out. And it's very important because he'll go to the co-pack facility, and there's several of them here in Lancaster and York County, and they help him make that shelf stable. Because he didn't think of that when he was thinking up his barbecue sauce that he won all these competitions with. How do I take this to market? Well, it has to become shelf stable. So he'll go to a co-pack facility, and they help address some of those issues. And that's where you look at the list of ingredients and why you always find preservatives in some food. But you have to go from your large mixing tanks into a filling machine. And there's always compressed air and steam used there. But you take a look at this flow diagram and you say, oh wow, yeah, there's a lot of my products, you know, your IPS type products that you can sell here. Again, a lot of pipe, a lot of fittings. Beer production, one of my favorite. Fermentation, there will be a tank vent, another tank vent, diatomaceous earth. So a lot of lager beers, you know, Bud Light or regular Budweiser, Coors, they're cloudy when they come out of fermentation. And it's okay to drink it cloudy, but people typically won't buy it because they think there's something wrong. So they'll go through a diatomaceous earth filter, which pulls a lot of those active yeast cells out. And then we'll have a filter downstream of the DE filter, the diatomaceous earth filter, in case any DE migrated downstream. If you have a swimming pool, especially an older style swimming pool, you probably have a diatomaceous earth pool filter. So you've probably seen what that white powdery stuff looks like. Then it goes into a storage tank. Typically they call it a bright tank. So you hold a beer up in a glass and it's clear, they refer to it as being bright. Don't ask me why, they do. So it goes into a storage tank and eventually goes to either keg filling or canning or bottling. So there may be some extra filtration steps in there depending on the product. So next time you're at a craft beer place, maybe up at Stouts in Adamstown, you see the beer's cloudy, go ahead and drink it. It actually is going to taste a lot different than a beer that doesn't have that cloudy appearance. Fermentation, making drugs or making yogurt. You're dealing with a fermented product. So this is a flow diagram of showing where you can sell a lot of pumps, a lot of valves, a lot of pipe, and filters. These are a list of some of our current customers. You've heard me talk about consumer goods. A lot of these people are involved in the manufacturing of consumable goods, especially in the food and beverage industry. That's it. So we feel that we have a comprehensive product line that addresses food and beverage industry fairly well. Quality, I mean, you can touch and feel some of the components. I believe in the quality of the product. Knowledgeable sales team, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I do have about 25 years of application experience. Aftermarket support, and then today what we're doing is just customer training. So that was kind of the shotgun approach to our product. So if you have any comments or questions or anything in general, feel free to ask. Thank you for your time.
Any questions, guys?
Was it too boring?
No, it's interesting.
Pepper shaker.
Yeah. I'm very,
Pepper shaker.
as someone in sales, I'm always trying to make sure that I don't put people to sleep, because I've sat where you've sat for 25 years and listened to talking heads like me, and it can be cumbersome just to get through it. So
You did a very nice job.
So I try to relate it to the consumer goods in the real world stuff. So not just, I mean, I would love for you to go to bed at night and wake up in the morning thinking about Donaldson and filters, but you're probably thinking about other stuff, probably more important things like, you know, IPS. But
Well, there are nights.
this is just looking at these flow diagrams or these illustrations of applications. If you've never been to an end user site, if you've never been to Turkey Hill or to a bakery or to a yogurt manufacturer, there's a lot going on there that helps support this business, this company that you work for.
So every filter that you sell has to go into some kind of a housing.
Correct. Yep.
You have nothing that would just be like portable throwaway.
No. Now there are some, for instance, like a spin-on filter. Once you bolt or you plumb that head in, the head, and then the spin-on filter is a can, and that's fully disposable. Some of the items that are on the table can be regenerated or cleaned, but eventually they become disposable. Some of the items on the table are not cleanable and they're disposable, such as this compressed air filter. But typically, yes, I would say probably about 95% of the time, the products that I currently sell, there's a housing, and that gets fitted, that gets piped in, and then you stick something on the inside. And there's a lot of flexibility.
If we call you and tell you that we have somebody that already has a housing, but it's somebody else's other than yours,
It
can you
depends.
match us up with a filter?
I can try. On the compressed air side of things, if you run into Parker, Dominic Hunter, or Ballston, I can do cross-reference, not for every single one, but I'll try. On the steam filter side, and this is very important, thank you for bringing that up. If you run into Spirax Sarco, I have a very, very attractive price, about 40% less than what Spirax Sarco people are paying. And that would be this sintered element on the desk here, in various different sizes depending on capacity.
So if we have a filter number, we can call you and
Yep.
try it.
Yeah, like a Spirax Sarco, Dominic Hunter, which is owned by Parker. On the liquid side, if you run into filter elements, which are featured here on page 4, that's a universal size. 2.5 inch OD, about 10 inches in length, 20 inches in length, or 30 inches in length. Give me the manufacturer, the part number, but best of yet, if you can give me the application, then I can try to provide you with a cross-reference.
Good questions, Leif. Anybody else?
Are they like easily to replace? I mean, they pretty much come apart pretty easy?
Yeah, for the NPT fitted vessel, this would typically be used for steam filter. We do have a spanner wrench, which grabs a hold of these grooves, and it's just a threaded twist off. And then the housing. So this will be piped in permanently, and then the
Okay.
filter element just press fits in there.
Okay.
That one is typical alpha valve style triclover.
Mhm.
Once you remove that tri-clamp, you just give the housing a little bump, and it releases it from the O-ring. And then the filter element, again, just press fits in.
But there is no way to turn it,
The
whatever
wrong
is
way?
coming through, to turn it off? They'd have to turn it off downstream. There's
Yeah,
no-
I don't have any valves built into this, so there will be a need for you guys to sell some valves as well. Especially for a first fit or a new application, the types of questions that you'll be asking your clients, whether you're inside sales, counter sales, or outside sales, that if it's a first fit, and the guys, I need a steam filler. Oh yeah, you do, but you need steam traps, you need valves, you need unions, you need fittings, so there's a whole slew of product. Even if the guy comes to the counter and he goes, you know, a forklift hit this, I need a new one. Well, if a forklift hit it, I bet there's some pipe and some valves that he needs too. So he has more than just one item on his shopping list. So the main thing as a distributor, when I was working with end users all the time, was always ask questions.
And all your filters are pretty much marked with the part number or
Yep.
whatever? for
Yeah, you can see that,
customers?
you can just go ahead and grab one, but it's either
Okay.
etched by acid or it's mechanically stamped
Okay,
on the end cap.
that's all I have.
Now, is this the element that can be steamed or cleaned?
Yeah, yeah,
Company in Florida, I think I was told.
Alabama is the
Alabama,
company that we
okay.
use. So even the one that's the pepper shaker can be put in an ultrasonic bath and cleaned. In the world of good, better, and best, ultrasonic cleaning is the best way to go.
How many times can they be cleaned?
About up to 6 times.
6.
And what happens there is that you just don't get it as clean as you got it the last time. And then that scenario plays out over and over and over and over. So now you don't have 100% capacity, now you're down to 50% capacity, and you gotta toss it. because you're putting an artificial load onto their boiler. He's still at Now's Foods to cook, to make applesauce. He needs now 19-pound steam going into his applesauce cooker. So he's got a control valve over here. He dials that in to give him 19-pound steam. But it's coming off of a 50-pound header. He's got a whole bunch of those on his applesauce cooker. Well, he doesn't get them clean. And he goes through that scenario like 6 times. Now he goes to the applesauce cooker and he looks at the pressure gauge and he goes, crap, I only got 12-pound steam. So now he goes over to his regulator and he opens it up more until that gauge reads 19. He's just consuming more energy than he needs to. And it's increasing his production costs. Because that filter element isn't clean. And the same scenario plays over in a compressor. You have an impact tool. It needs minimally 80 pounds pressure. But you go to the regulator and you go, oh crap, I only got 60. Well, I'm going to open up the regulator some more. Now I got 80 pounds on my impact tool. You've just thrown money down the drain when you do that. So, artificial load is what they refer to that as. So that's it.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Make sure you sign the attendance list. I get paid on that.
Why? That doesn't matter.
I didn't realize you were, somebody gets paid. I trust not to.
Throw some other neighbor in there.